Hello, hi, welcome, cool cats and kittens, to The One Thing. Now, our focus today for the next 45 minutes, 1 hour, is to help you protect your contribution margins, aka, that thing called profits. If this is the first time you're joining us on The One Thing, every time we get together, we bring and assemble an illustrious panel from the brand side, the technology side, agency side, all things D2C e-commerce, to deliver unto you in as distilled fashion as possible the promise right on top of the CTA anybody who's here today clicked, which is to get tactical AF. So I'm not even going to spend any time introducing all of these beautiful smiling faces until it's their time to go. Now, the way we do this is each speaker has been tasked with giving us a single principle, a single application, and a single example. In most of these cases, we have broken the single example rule, but I've told them those examples, plural, better be dead set on illustrating that single principle and application to keep us all aligned on this tactical AF, because we have one goal for you. We will have failed you, nay, dear watcher, you will have failed yourself if you do not walk away from this with at least one takeaway to make your e-commerce business 1% better. So, get your screenshot tool fingers ready. Get your Q&A fingers on the keyboard ready to drop any additional questions you have along the way so that we can grab all those together at the end. Make sure you are on the lookout for your one thing. On this topic of contribution margins, there is hardly a better human to kick this whole thing off. My good friend, Andrew Ferris from the mysteriously named AJF Growth, right? Maybe he'll explain to us where he came up with that amazingly original name for his consultancy. One of the smartest humans I know, especially on this topic of what makes a business profitable. Andrew, take it away.
Thanks for the very kind intro, Aaron, and I appreciate so much that you're wearing proudly your FC Goods hat, which is great to see. It's a brand that I used to work on. I gotta start my timer so I don't go over. Okay, there we go. We're starting with this idea of contribution margin and thinking about how you handle contribution margin in your business. AJF Growth is my name, Andrew J. Ferris, very creatively titled. And that's because it's a like consultancy or a business or an LLC. Really, it's just me. And so that's the whole thing. So anyway, that's what I do. I help brands grow. All right. Your contribution margin, define, analyze, prioritize your contribution margins. That's the principle of this whole thing. Aaron, you can go to the next slide right away, which is, what do we mean by contribution margin? So the question is, like, how do we define this term? And I'm going to tell you from the outset that no matter what I say right here about what this means, there's actually some level of debate and consternation over exactly what we mean by contribution margin. So I'm going to give you what basically I'm trying to get at the end of the day, which is the really important thing, which is in the definition that Aaron is going to click on right now, which is contribution margin is the dollar amount or percentage. You could really define it either way. Both can be useful to you. The dollar amount or percentage of product sales left over after accounting for all variable costs associated with those sales. So in order to sell a product on the internet, there are a bunch of costs that go into that product and to selling that product at the level of every product, right? Not just like the cost of me and my salary if I'm working in a business, which would be part of your operating expenses or something like that. But like, I'm talking about the costs that go into actually selling a particular product, variable by every product you sell. So I've got some examples of what all of those would be right here. The first and most obvious would be the landed cost of goods sold. That is your actual product costs, right? If I'm selling deodorant, like I have a deodorant client right now, it's like the actual stick and the packaging and the shipping to get all of that stuff out to my 3PL. That's what I mean by landed. So landed cost of goods would be the actual product itself. And then merchant account fees, that's your credit card processing fee. That's actually something people overlook a lot, which is a variable cost associated with selling a product. If you're on Shopify, that's probably 30 cents per order plus about just under 3% per order to your credit card processors. So that's all there. So that's just like a little less margin you have on every order every time you take someone's credit card. Fulfillment costs, that would be costs associated with actually fulfilling the order. So if you're using a 3PL, that would typically be your processing fee, which is normally a flat fee, like a buck or two, and then a pick and pack per unit. If you're putting 10 units into one package, you're typically paying for each one of those picks to get those into that package. Your freight to customer, which is a huge one in D2C, huge one in e-commerce, actually being able to ship the cost, whether you collect money for it or not, or charge for shipping or not, you are being charged to ship to the customer. And then another one that people don't think about sometimes is projected product returns. You'll have some sense of this. If you're selling apparel, this is probably a very big number, right? There's just going to be some amount of returns as part of the deal. If you're selling a lot of other products, this will be under 5%, but you should factor that in because you're going to have to factor in the fact that some of that inventory is going to come back to you and you need to be aware of that when you do that. So you add all those together, those are all of the costs associated with that. And then this is the last one. This is the one where there's some debate. I would put this in I would put contribution margin after this, but your attributed advertising costs, your CAC, if you are advertising to sell your product, this is a variable cost associated with selling every order that goes out, some amount of CAC that goes into that. So yeah, some people include it, some don't. I actually don't really care whether you include it. What I really care about is that you're thinking about and measuring how much profit you're generating at the end of every sale you make, basically, in your business, because that's where profit's going to come from in your business total. That's why we care about contribution margin. Your leftover dollars after accounting for all of these costs is your contribution margin, or your leftover percentage after accounting for all of these is your contribution margin. You can go to the next slide, Aaron. You can see all this. Here's why this matters, because as somebody who's helping people grow brands, probably one of the top 3 questions I get asked is, what's a good ROAS? If I'm working with them on Facebook ads or Google ads or something, people all want to know what's a good ROAS. And my answer is, it depends. It depends on all kinds of factors in your business. And so the way I would do this is I would build all of those costs into a sheet like this. And these are all variable costs. And I would come up with a percentage afterwards. You can see in row 12 there of how much basically cost is involved with selling the product. And then that would give me a sense of how much I can spend on advertising relative to my goals. So my ROAS targets column on the right there doesn't really matter. It's just giving you a range of possible outcomes for how you're thinking about the business. Some brands may want to just like try and scale to the moon really fast. They're totally fine with losing money on the first purchase and having a negative contribution margin. You can see in column H there, right? Some brands are like, no, we've got to put money in our pocket today on first order. Some brands want to go break even and make their money on lifetime value and the contribution margin that'll come down the road. Whatever that is, ultimately you just have to have some sense of what you're trying to accomplish in your business and where the contribution margin, where the profit is. I saw a question in the chat about whether or not you can include agency fees. Again, I don't really care. What I really care about is that you understand what variable costs are associated with your product, and then where margin is being created in your business. So you could include those. If every time I sell a product, it's going to have some associated cost with it, it's a variable cost associated with it, then sure, count it against your contribution margin. Roll that all together and go to the next slide, Aaron. And here's really the point. Here's really the big point of your business or of this topic. You need to know, if you want to scale your business, you need to know not only where you're trying to get to, not only what your LTV is, all that kind of stuff, but you need to know exactly how your brand generates profit before you try to grow it. You need to know where profit is coming from in your brand, or where value is coming from in your brand potentially, in order to grow it. If you don't know that, it's going to be really, really hard to grow without getting yourself into a lot of trouble, and build all your forecasting, all your targets, all your plans around that question.
Now, we have asked a lot of Andrew to throw in like 8-10 minutes. So I'm going to drop in 2 links to a podcast that you recently did with Bill DA. That's what I know him from the Twitters. Fabulous discussion that goes really deep into contribution margin and how to integrate it, particularly into your ad buying. So because that element is so important, what I want to do is basically blend our next speaker into this, continue the idea of once that's set, can you put an even finer tip, a finer point on how you approach your ad buying in particular, as that's going to be the primary growth lever for most D2C e-commerce businesses? So next up to do exactly that is Alex Romack from Tyto. Take it away, good sir.
Well, thanks for having me, Aaron, and everybody else here on the panel. So I'm Alex, I'm from Tyto, and just really quickly, Tyto is your data team as a service. I'm in charge of the custom analytics. And what that means is that we set up databases for your business, help you figure out how to get all that data from all these different sources into the database. And then we build dashboards and reporting tools with you that are customized to solving your business's needs. So you can head to the next slide, Aaron. So blended ROAS, kind of piggybacking off of Andrew's points, and that last point in particular, I like to factor in the full cost of marketing. So kind of how do you do this and how do you apply this? A couple different components here. You got to calculate your COGS, and I like to do this as a percentage of your gross sales. I like to add all the costs of your associated advertising fees. So this is agency fees, influencer contracts, gifts that you're sending to those people, out of home spend, subway fees, things like that. And then even just the software fees associated with managing all this stuff. Then I like to calculate a blended break-even ROAS and measure against it in these dashboards. So you can jump to the next slide. So just quickly, a lot of these data sources plug in nicely to databases, but not all of them do. And some of these sources that don't plug in nicely have significant spend associated with them. So think of like a Subway ad. It's, running for 30, 60 days, costs you 15 grand. Like that's not nothing. And that will have an impact on your sales. Just using kind of the off the shelf connections, you would miss that was a fee you had to pay to get those sales. So when you do factor in all these things, they do make a big difference. Next. And like, how does that actually translate to the contribution margin or like your profit? When you actually factor them in, it can be the difference between, making money or losing money, depending on how you calculate it. So again, I think it's important to kind of approach this from that holistic view, and to factor it in might actually change the way you are making your decisions. You can jump to the next one. So like, how do you actually implement this? Well, something that I love to do is like, I'm privileged that I have all this data coming in live, but there's like almost all the brands have a couple different sources that aren't live data. So think of like influencer contracts, not live. It's usually like done over email. How do you factor that in and match that to the live data? I love to use Google Sheets and then connect the Google Sheet to my database and then write queries that just pull from that. So specifically with things like influencer spend, out of home spend, I like to amortize that spend over sort of like a lifetime of the impact like of that effort. So like you go live with a big influencer, you spend 10 grand, maybe do 5 grand on the first day, and then the second day, 2 grand, and then sort of like trickle down and taper off over the next couple of days. But the importance here, I think, of Google Sheets is that it allows you to make that decision. It's not a calculation. It's completely up to you. You might have a finance team or somebody who's great at Excel who's come up with a model for this. And this sort of allows you to use like the best of that world and then combine it with the live data coming from Facebook and these other sources to get sort of that true like daily spend. And that allows you to calculate that break-even ROAS. Next. So like, how do you actually see that in a dashboard? Well, here's your ROAS. So this would be factoring in all the live data and then sort of that manual component, put it into one query, graph it over time, group it by month, week, however you want to do it. You can also throw in your projections, how you thought you might be doing, again, via Google Sheets integrations. And I think this is a pretty powerful tool as to how to make decisions, when you're planning. You want to dump more money into something, you can start layering this graph and then layering things in like, where was that big period of, TV spend? Maybe you want add an extra line, a third or a second axis for the TV spend to see how that looks. So this is one of the ways that we do it at Taito, just one of the many ways. But yeah, next slide. So yeah, that's my point, is make sure you track all your ad spend and all those costs when you're calculating your break-even ROAS.
Emphasis on all is what I heard over and over again in that. This is I mean, if I had my screenshot stuff ready, absolutely. Emphasis on all, which does lead right off of Andrew's into probably one of the places that you don't typically think, because this isn't associated with spend, but it is associated with costs. Right? So next up, to talk to us about this whole idea of what I would say is one of the hidden costs, and we're going to unpack this 2 times over because it's so important, but to unpack it for the first time, Oren Charnoff from Fondue. Good sir, can the people hear you?
Yes, they can.
Outstanding. Off you go.
All right. So, hey, everyone at The One Thing, longtime listener, first-time caller, super pumped to be here. So what we're going to speak about is actually an addiction that a lot of us have, and it's a silent killer to your margins. I'm here to talk about everyone's coupon code problem. It's okay. This is a safe space. We could talk about it. And I'm here for you on DMs. And what I want to do is speak about like the challenge of the fact that discounts frickin' work, but that coupon codes frickin' suck. And how can you use this for first purchase profitability? Because discounts work. They are so effective. An acute marketing line, I hope you like this one, Aaron, is that they are the currency of conversion. Shoppers really like deals. But it's kind of a catch-22, because if you're buying anything on D2C, it means you're brand first and price second, because categorically you can get something at a fraction of the price on Amazon or Alibaba. And yet the shoppers desire the dopamine hit of discounting, yet they're not necessarily price sensitive to it. But wait, there's more, another slide. And that's because the status quo of how discounting works, if you could go ahead and click, good sir, is that coupon codes are old, stinky tech that do not meet the call of the moment, which is that not every shopper needs the discount, although they might desire the experience of winning. And if you could just go ahead and click on the next few, they're also everywhere. I'm going to be just one thing, speaking about first purchase. Let's just talk pop-up and welcome series territory here. Ads, influencers, and affiliates, you can hit me up for that separately. But I really want to focus here on that first purchase profitability, because from the brands that we work with, what we see is that nearly all pop-ups offer an incentive as a coupon code. Most of the emails and SMSs that you'll send, check out Recart, will be done with including a discount. And as soon as that coupon code is applied, it demolishes profit margin. It is flawless technology to make less profit every single sale. I think there's another sentence here. And there's a different way to do it, which is how do we A/B test this addiction out of the welcome series? How can we get a better discount going? That's okay. I'm here for you with the next slide. So I want to walk you through an example of how this brand, this is an 8-digit profitable, bootstrapped. Fun fact, these founders try to remain anonymous, but they are professional basketball players in the minor leagues. This is how they overcame their coupon code problem in the welcome series. So as opposed to offering get, some percentage off, they, oh my gosh, so bizarre, used Fondue to offer get 20% back in cash or credit, where shoppers then see in that email and SMS flow via a UTM link, not a leaky coupon code, that you could press here to be eligible for a post-purchase kickback, which they're reminded of in their cart. Post-purchase, after that full price purchase, they get an email or an SMS that says, do you want this money, fine sir or ma'am? Where they either engage in it or they don't. And if they do, you either give them that discount that you offered in cash, or post-purchase in the romance period of I can't wait to get my product confirmation bias, you juice up a site credit to incentivize them to reconvert. And if you go to the next slide when I'm not demoing my product, I can speak through why this works. So if you could click 1, 2, 3. The first is not every shopper will claim that discount, because if you're buying an $80 candle instead of a $5 candle, do you care to save 10%? No, you don't. And rather than taking this as cash, can you take it as a site credit? And because this is way more profitable, you can also dramatically increase that welcome series offer as such to increase list growth and revenue growth while doing it more profitably each and every time. So my one takeaway, in the wise words of Dr. Orendorff, who did teach public speaking in university, is if you look at our data, this is the closest thing to a trade secret. When a coupon code's applied, you will lose profit and margin every time guaranteed. It's incredible at that. And across all of our data, 1 out of 2 shoppers, when getting push notifications, don't care to claim the discount. 20% take site credit, and it's only 30 cents on the dollar that's paid out. So homie, you could double the discount, which we will then use to wrap up on this next slide, which I thought was the previous slide, that you're available to get the hats here. No one wears them. We send them to people. They're also ugly. As fuck coupon codes. They unnecessarily and systematically drain contribution margins. There is a better way. And thank you. I love you all so much.
Delightful, sir. I've got to, yeah, I gotta get some of that hat action. You know me and my love of, at least on social media, edited profanity, but fuck coupon codes. Brilliant. Oh,
Preach.
Okay, so to continue this from what is to ad platform to first purchase profitability, I want to sort of take one step further down into the funnel, in essence. And our next speaker is probably the one you all came here to see. No. That is myself, Aaron Orendorff. And I want to talk about how to unite your SMS in particular, because it's the most costly form of remarketing compared to email or push notifications. How do you unite your SMS around this thing that we talk about called high volume, high profit? And the very first question I get is, what in the world is high volume, high profit SMS? And TLDR, what I'm talking about is spending less to make more, right? That's really all it comes down to here. Now I can get a lot more fancy with that. And we do, because all SMS operates on 2 axes. And on the left-hand side here, you've got low to high profit, meaning how much against your spend revenue are you bringing in? And then on the bottom axis, low to high volume, how many messages are you sending out? And there's a lot of different ways and tips and tools inside each one of these for you to nail, depending on where you land in this matrix. But to keep us focused, I simply want to zero in on the most painful quadrant that a lot of the larger brands we work with, especially as they're coming in to Recart, are having, which is when more doesn't equal more. Higher volume, more messages, lower profit. Right? So I want to zero in on this idea of sending no-click purchase reminders. Okay? I want to illustrate with a big example from a big day, from a big brand. And I'm going to show you a medium. But this is from one of our largest clients, BlendJet. Massive retail presence, omni-channel, massively growing Shopify Plus brand themselves. This was part of their Black Friday sequence that went out just a few months ago, where we went morning, afternoon, Sunday afternoon, wash and repeat for Cyber Monday itself. And we're going to play a little game here called One of These Things Is Not Like the Other. I'll pause for just a second to let you, one of these things is not like the other, right? Massively lower send, massively lower spend, middling sales, but off the charts ROI. And I want to emphasize that everything I'm showing you right now is click only sales, click only ROI on these messages or unique discount code. All right. So I want you to notice this massive drop in send, spend, middling sales, huge lift in ROI. This is the biggest of the big, right? Over $250,000 on their list for last 180-day engaged. And then zeroing in on Sunday afternoon, smaller volume, higher returns. Right? How did they do that? Well, before I answer that question, this is another brand, Nursing Queen. In this case, we've got a not such a big deal day, Easter, coming up soon. We'll play it again. One of these things is not like the other, right? And you know where this is going this time. We've got our Easter promotion, our Easter follow-up, and what's called the Easter upgrade in this case, with that same pattern of far lower spend, far lower sends, solid sales on that spend, massive lift in ROI. And the way this is happening with each of these brands, and we do this systematically across the board, and you can adopt this for yourself, is the last message in each one of these is not a flow. It's an automated campaign that only sends to people who clicked but did not purchase or add to cart over the previous messages themselves. Now, really quickly, I simply want to show you the tactics of this that you can actually apply to your business for the next big event. And I've actually preloaded what should be your next big event, March 17th. Who can tell me what March 17th is? Okay? This
My
is our
brother's
callback.
birthday.
Is it Andrew's brother's birthday?
Yeah.
St. Patty's Day.
That's right.
Alex, you failed me. And St. Patty's Day is coming up March 17th. So we're going to kick off a 20% off your next order, St. Patrick's Day. Send it off at 9 a.m. in the morning in the subscriber's time zone. Maybe we get a little bit fancier. Instead of sending to all subscribers, we go for last 365, last 180-day engaged, right? Maybe we do a little bit of segmenting on top of that. But typically, it's one and done. So instead, what I want you to do for your next campaign is give yourself a 24-hour delay. Either make this manual for your next campaign, or you can automate it in something like Recart, all right? Now, in this case, right, the only problem I see here with this less than 24-hour or 24-hour delay is, unfortunately, that's going to go out on St. Patty's Day, and we don't want to hit everybody at 9:30 a.m. the next day, because often you see that little chain right there. It's like, oh, what's going to happen? They're not going to be in a shopping mood. So in this one rare instance, we're going to kick it out to 28 hours after. So it hits them late morning, early afternoon. Just let people recover from the hangovers. So they're ready to shop again. All right. We're going to throw a conditional split, and write this down or screenshot this. And let me show you the three things you're going to put into any SMS platform. All right, you're going to filter based on has not placed an order in the last 2 days, because we're going out 28 hours instead of just 24. You're going to filter out anybody who currently has an abandoned cart, because your abandoned cart flow should pick them up. And you're also going to filter in anyone who's clicked a flow. And in this case, we're simply going to name it the exact name of this flow itself. So anyone who's clicked our St. Patrick's Day over the previous send, that's the only folks we want to target. They showed intent. They didn't add to cart. They didn't buy. We're going to scoop up all that tasty, tasty, tasty revenue that's left on the table for very, very, very low cost. All right. With the exact same freaking message. It doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel. They enjoyed it once, give it to them again. That is literally 95% of the time what we simply do is they showed interest, let's push them across the line. My big one thing, don't send more texts. Gasp, heresy from an SMS app dude, right? Don't send more texts. Send more efficient text to the people who actually want to buy from you based on their previous behavior. You can do this inside any platform. We just happen to make it a little bit easier here at Recart. All right. Now, I told you, first order profitability. So important that we're actually going to double dip into it a second time with another massively intelligent, influential person in my own life, Drew Sanaki from Postpilot. You are up next, sir. Are you ready to go?
I am. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Let's do it.
I'm just here watching the treasury market implode. How's everybody doing? Good. So this is what I want to talk about today is reducing your subsidy costs with a discount ladder. It's probably like the #1 technique I've used throughout my career. So click. My background's in e-commerce turnarounds. I never run the sexy brand. I always run the bankrupt one. So Karmaloop, Auto Anything, Morris 4x4, and Overtone all were sort of nearing bankruptcy or in bankruptcy when I acquired them. All kind of big 8- and 9-figure brands. And the task that I had was to get them profitable as soon as I could, often within 90 days. And the technique I leaned on, click, Aaron, is this idea of eliminating a subsidy cost. You can click again to bring up the bullets. A subsidy cost is never going to be seen in your financials. So it's basically the margin you are all giving away when a customer would have bought anyway. So I think Orna Fondue touched on this, but it's the idea that, hey, I've got my credit card out. I'm going to Auto Anything. I know the part I need, or I know the floor mat I want. And what's the first thing I see when I get to Auto Anything? I see like a spin the wheel. Of course, I'm going to spin it. Of course, I'm going to take whatever deal they give me, but I would have bought it anyway. So it's not really seen in the financials, but that's a huge cost paid out and a big hit to your contribution margin. Click. So this is kind of what I call this my $2 million afternoon, because this is kind of what I did at Karmaloop, really in an afternoon, to sort of carve that discount ladder back. I mean, it's just dollars that you can win back that go immediately to your bottom line. I want to get actionable now and talk to you about how you would approach eliminating your own discount, your own subsidy cost with a technique called a discount ladder. So next slide, Aaron. The first step is you want to look at how customers typically act on your site. So there's something that often happens between a first and second purchase. There's a standard behavior. You know, the customer buys the sweater first, and then 30 or 40 days later, if they're going to be a two-time buyer, they buy the pants. You can do a chart like this, but you'll see over time that, you know, in this case, I think this was overtone. The average, these are women coloring their hair. The average woman replenishes every 47 days, right? So you want to find what the typical behavior is. And the general idea is, hey, if it's every 30 days somebody reorders, or every 60 days, that everything up until that point means the customer is likely to buy again. Like, you shouldn't incentivize a purchase. What you should be doing is showing more things to buy. And only after the customer passes through that sort of average time, wherever you set the threshold, that's when you can start getting promotional, because that customer is defecting. He or she's becoming less and less likely to ever come back again. So it's just a general concept. Next slide, Aaron. The idea, you know, it's going to be different for every retailer, right? But you want to look at your own customer data, and you build what's called a discount ladder. So, hey, in this case, hypothetical retailer, the customer's coming back on average every 30 days. That means, like, hey, maybe at 30 days, I'm going to set my first promotional rung 10% off. Then if it's gotten to 60 days and the customer hasn't taken my offer, I increase the discount to 20%, and then at 90 days, 30%. And then I can pretty much say goodbye to that customer because she's not coming back again. So that's the idea. And you know, important to note, if the customer takes the bait, if the customer takes the discount at any point in this ladder, he or she falls out of the sequence. So they don't see subsequent discounts. Next slide, Aaron. And once you develop that intelligence and that idea around when your customers are going to buy again and how you want to discount, you just deploy that rung across all your channels. So you have the same thing going in email as you have going in direct mail, as you have going in SMS, and ideally on-site pop-ups. So what you've done is, like, you've created this net, this sort of retention net that pulls the customer back to buy again. Ideally, and it's synced across, you know, every touch point with that customer. Next slide. Here's an example from Karmaloop. You know, just really simple stuff, 10, 15, 20% ladder. Next slide. This is an email. So I set that up in Klaviyo in an afternoon. Here, I've done it in Postpilot, the direct mail platform I run. So you can see here, this is one example from Overtone, where it's a 90-day rung. This is the last purchase was 90 days ago. Overtone knows if the customer has gotten to 90 days without a second purchase, she's probably not coming back naturally. We need to incentivize that purchase so they can give the 20% off discount. Next slide, Aaron. And then the last thing you want to do, I mean, it's very easy to test these things. You could do it in Klaviyo. You could do it in a number of different solutions. I always did it in Google Analytics. So you just use your UTMs and you give each campaign a name. You could be testing a 20% off versus a 30% off. You can test the days, but within a couple months, you should arrive at what the most profitable discount ladders are to deploy for your business. Next slide. And then you automate it, right? So what you've done is typically when I take over a business, it's I go in and I do one discount ladder. 9 times out of 10, it's like a 30, 60, 91. I ratchet my discounts up over time, and then you lock that in. And then the next thing you do is just keep iterating. You're going to realize if you have multiple products that the average customer behavior is different by the product they come in. People who come in and buy sportswear might be different from people who come in and buy swimwear. They're all going to have different life cycles, different behavior, and you can be able to iterate your ladders out and build these out across your whole business based on what the customer does when he or she comes into your business. So next slide, Aaron. One question I get a lot is like, okay, I don't like to discount. What else can I do? Free gift with purchase, expedited shipping, buy one, get one, bundles. I mean, Fondue just brought up, you can cash back. Like there's like a zillion things you can do in lieu of a discount. I use the term discount just to mean you basically want to ascend the value of a promotion to that customer to the point where he or she gets off the fence and buys again, right? It doesn't have to be like a pure discount. I've got a list that I can send you. If anybody wants to hit me up on Twitter or something, I'm happy to send that out. Next slide, Aaron. And kind of this was a key realization I had in my own career was, after building out this discount ladder in my email software, I'd iterated, I did it by different customer types. I would do them all different according to the initial product purchased. I mean, imagine at Auto Anything, we had ladders going for truck buyers versus car buyers, or car owners, people who bought floor mats versus people who bought parts. These things get really complicated. They're all built into our CRM, but it really creates sort of this proprietary intelligence off your customer data that your competitors never see, because you're communicating these ladders out to your customers via email, SMS, direct mail, whatever. It's not obvious when you go to your site, what discount you're giving to whom. And it really, I think it builds a nice differentiator, a nice little competitive advantage internal to the business. Next slide, Aaron. So this is my one takeaway. Leverage your customer data to deploy more effective promotions with the customers who matter most. Think in terms of your hidden subsidy cost and how to combat that with a discount ladder.
Hidden subsidy cost. I gotta say thank you, because in all honesty, I saw that come in. I knew it was going to be fire, and I literally didn't know what a subsidy cost was, particularly a hidden subsidy cost. And that unlock right outside of each one of those typical buying windows. Ladder, talk about bringing together that first purchase in through, then what's next. That's the idea we're hanging on to here. Well, to round us out, we're going to be moving one step even deeper into the funnel, to the bottom of the funnel, and essentially thinking about how to bring people back up into the top of it to go back through again. And to do that is Noah Small from Tapcart. Noah, give me a holler.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, first of all, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate all the work that you put into this. This has been great. Also, your transitions are like right on point. These are some perfect transitions. So kudos to you. Oren, I didn't even know that I was addicted to discounts until your presentation. Now I know. I'll reach out separately to discuss.
Yeah, no,
today I'm going to be
I'm
talking.
totally here for you. You'll be okay.
I appreciate it, Oren. Today I'm going to be, my principle is accelerating the value of your already most valuable customers. And when I'm talking about our most valuable customers, I'm talking about the folks who are, following your brand, who are interested in your products, who really want to be a part of your community. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about mobile trends. So I think, if you're anyone like me, you get that, notification from Apple that tells you how much time you've spent on your phone at the end of the week, and you're frightened. I know I am, and it's always increasing. People are spending more time on their phone than they ever have before, especially on apps as well. I think if you think just more broadly outside of e-commerce, if you want to know where your friends are at, you're going to Instagram, you want food, you're going to DoorDash or Grubhub. We're spending so much time on our phones. One of the first questions that we ask, over at TapCart when we speak to Emergent is like, on average, what % of your e-commerce traffic is coming from mobile? And on average, we see about 79% of e-commerce traffic is coming from mobile. And a lot of times we actually see much higher than that. We can get anywhere up to 80, 90% as well. Can I get a few clicks? Perfect. And that's really, setting up the first problem that we're trying to solve for over at TapCart, which is, purchasing on a mobile desktop experience is less than ideal. If you don't have an app and someone's just going on your website on their phone, they're really not going to have a great experience. It's going to be harder to navigate. It's a clunky checkout, frequent cart abandonment. It's just, not the experience that people have become accustomed to. And I think it's pretty obvious when you see an app, versus like the mobile desktop experience, how user friendly it is and how much of a difference it makes. Click. Thank you. That's really the second problem that I want to tackle here is, paid social. I think most people, anyone with a brand will know that paid social has doubled, if not tripled in the last 2 years. It's skyrocketed. Organic reach is very, very low. As you see, Facebook, it's around 2.2%. With Instagram, it's about 9.4%. This is really why we stress having an own marketing channel like push notifications. And the way that I like to describe an own marketing channel, we've already talked about a few on this call, is anywhere that you have subscribers, but not necessarily followers. So you might have a ton of followers on Instagram, but who owns that audience? Well, Facebook owns that audience, and they're the one who controls what, when and what your consumer sees. When you put something on Instagram, you're fundamentally creating something that Facebook is making money off of. And as a rule, you really want to take as much ownership of your sales and marketing end to end and not rely on these tech giants to distribute your message. With push notifications, you're not getting followers, you're getting subscribers. So this is someone who has provided you their email, their phone number, actually downloaded your app and opted into push and basically said, I want to hear from you guys. Next slide, please. Thank you. You can do a few clicks here, like one more click and one more. There we go. I'm getting click happy. So this is really where push notifications comes in. So push notifications, as you see on the right, this is an example of, it's a little small of Princess Polly, one of our merchants, push notification for an exclusive drop. Push notifications are dynamic. You're getting these alerts in real time. They're totally on brand. Some of our most common push notifications that we send out are exclusive drops, abandoned cart, welcome series, back in stock. And I think what's also really interesting about push notifications is that not all push notifications need to be a transactional message. So I know, we have, if you guys know the soccer player Messi, he has an app with a clothing brand that's not as well known, I think, as his brand. But every single time that he would score a goal, while he was playing in the World Cup, they would just send out a push notification, and lo and behold, they'd see a surge in revenue. Even if the push notification was like, "Hey, congrats! Like, look, check out what this goal." It wasn't a transactional message, but it often led to a lot more revenue. There's another really cool brand that I like a lot that we work with called MyObvi. They sell collagen protein, and they just send out push notifications, reminding their community to drink water. So not every single push notification has to be like super transactional, but it's a great way to engage your audience and really build a community. I would say because of this, consumers are 3 times more likely to purchase on a mobile app than a mobile desktop experience. This is for all the reasons that we mentioned above. It's just the experience is way more user friendly. And we're also, if you utilize push notifications right, you're also going to lift session frequency significantly because you're going to keep bringing people back to your app. Click, please. Yeah, all these factors lead to a 2.4x increase in LTV for your already most valuable customers. I think it makes sense where, once you have the better consumer experience and you're also utilizing push notifications in an engaging way, people are just going to convert at a much higher clip. Next. So my last takeaway is get your most valuable customers into the least expensive, most convergent rate and lifetime value accelerating channel you can. That's basically, increase engagement and revenue by meeting your consumers where they are. Your consumers are on mobile, and that's the best place to reach them.
And what I love about this idea is your already most valuable customers, that it's one, identifying them, and then it's narrowing in on the least expensive way to capture more of their attention. So it's focused on what we might from the building on the front end all the way into the discount ladders. I could just see the cyclical process layered over all the different channels, and then on into how do we identify and how do we get those most valuable people into the place that makes them even more valuable? So it's such a narrow focus on that's that incremental 1%, right? That 1% takeaway, 1% better. Now we did get a couple of questions come through, and not surprisingly, the first actually was around including agency fees in variable costs. We only have a few minutes left, but either Alex, Andrew, or Drew, I imagine, probably have the most experience with this. Agency fees, and the key word there is variable cost. One or more of you want to try to tackle that? Should I be including that into my breakdown?
I'll say something there, and Alex, I think you might have something to say too. I think if you're paying on a percentage of spend consistently or a percentage of revenue where it truly is a variable cost associated with the sale of the product, it probably makes more sense to do that. If it is actually a flat service fee, then I would file it under OpEx a little bit more directly. And you still have to be conscious of it in terms of the total P&L of your business. But I want to make a distinction between your P&L construction and how you're thinking about OpEx as a separate thing and contribution margin relative to variable costs. And the reason I want to make that distinction is I think the main way that e-commerce businesses scale profitably is by overcoming OpEx, essentially. That OpEx shrinks as a percentage of revenue as you grow. E-commerce has really good, as a general rule, D2C has really, really good scalability and efficiency on that particular section of your P&L. And the reason why is the same amount of work to send an email to 1,000 people as it is to 1 million people, basically, right? And so the ability to sort of generate increased marginal profit against your OpEx is really significant. So the way I would structure my business most times would be to say, I want to be targeting and forecasting for that OpEx to shrink as a percentage of revenue as I scale my business overall. And so if your percentage of spend, if you're on a limitless percentage of spend contract with your agency or your freelancer or whatever, then you're never going to get away from that. That OpEx is never going to shrink as a percentage of revenue. And probably you should actually cap that. You should renegotiate and cap that deal somewhere, because it's never going to work out if you're paying them an absurd amount of money. But that's the way I would probably think about it. So I would include it if it's going to scale forever with your costs variably. I would not if it is a flat fee, and I would think about where to find that efficiency in your OpEx as you grow, if that makes sense.
If it increases as product velocity, as the number of things you sell increases, if they are in lockstep, hard variable cost. That's the idea. All right. So that makes all the sense in the world to me. Any extra sprinkle you want to put on top of that, Alex?
Yeah, look, I think that's totally fair. And I think I work with a lot of kind of mid-sized brands, couple $1 million a year type things. And they're making decisions on bringing on agencies for specific channels in a lot of cases. And in that sense, it's kind of variable. I think maybe take Andrew's point and apply it to the agency and say, is this an overall growth agency where they're really more of part of your team, or is this specific to a channel? And that you do always have the choice to turn on or off that channel. And I would say that part is truly variable, especially for a lot of these smaller teams. So yeah.
This is the other question I really wanted to tackle too, because this was Q&A. Andrew answered it, but I wanted to throw it out there. The question was, do you feed these profit numbers back to ad platforms like Facebook instead of revenue? And this gets at a very hot topic, which is the idea of the balance between attribution that you can see versus the numbers that any ad platform can see, the data any ad platform can see, which is the only numbers, the only data that they can actually optimize your spend, your ads against. And it's a disconnect that often isn't really brought to the forefront in the heated attribution wars of today, with all of the other tools that, we don't need to name. It's that there's often a disconnect literally between what you can see in the attribution side. So you're optimizing against a very clear understanding of how do I make money, but that data isn't getting pushed back into. Now, Andrew, you kind of asked about this, but has anyone seen, I guess the right word is just success. I would think, Drew, given the extensive number of businesses you've spent time inside and the turnarounds, is that something you prioritize at an ad platform level to push that data back in?
Yeah, as soon as we try to tie lifetime value back to acquisition channel, keywords, pieces of content, campaigns, things like that.
And does that essentially then get reflected in the ROAS target that you set on those various channels? And then even inside of, you said keywords, I'm thinking campaigns, like that sort of thing, so that you may not be able to, and maybe you can, and I'm just ignorant, to build a dashboard that reflects that in the ad platform, but at least the targets that you're setting based on the data that you've collected.
Right. I would say ROAS is like a quick back of the envelope calculation, but it's really just measuring revenue against spend. As we got more sophisticated, you'd be able to measure actual contribution margin against spend or just per campaign, which was much more actionable.
Per campaign against.
You can set up a custom column in your Meta Ads dashboard and in your Google Ads dashboard, which would be the two probably key ones, where you can actually build out a contribution margin thing. And I'll even sometimes build out, like, if I'm adding in an LTV contribution margin forecast, which I normally do for a brand, then you can actually add that in as well, sort of like what your projected contribution margin on that is, by just kind of building a custom formula that all it would do is take like the screenshot of the Google sheet that I had earlier and just subtract all that stuff out of the spend. So including the spend itself. So yeah, you can do that. I've got at least one client that I do that for, where I report on contribution margin like that, but I tend to do more what Drew said, which is set my ROAS target based on that information and then just monitor the ROAS target, just because I'm just used to it. But it would probably help me more if I was actually building the contribution margin a little more directly into it. But yeah, you could, and you'd probably be well served getting used to that being your metric, to be honest. If you made a point of building that thing into something you reported on everywhere that you go. I mentioned it, but in that podcast that you linked, Aaron, Bill D'Alessandro talks about rooting out revenue metrics and replacing them with contribution margin metrics everywhere he possibly can in his business. And that's, I think, pretty good advice in general.
Well, speaking of screenshots, that's probably the best point to end on. I do want to give a big thank you to all of our presenters today. I want to press you to now go do the one thing you took away. Andrew used the word screenshot. For me, that's the magical word of what was the one thing that you grabbed. Slack it to yourself, DM it to yourself, email it to your team, and rest assured, if you do want additional screenshots of anything, we're going to be sending out the full recording. We'll see if we can't get or talk Andrew into how to build that custom formula inside your ad platforms. Drew's list of alternative discounts. We'll be sure to throw fondue right at the top of that alternative list as well, as long as but some great additional resources as well. And thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our everyone that came along on this ride. You should have all of their social information as well. Be sure to hit them up, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Aaron.